The new group stage format is about to commence, guys, and with the new restructuring of the Champions League, teams all across Europe have got their sights set on one thing and one thing only, and that is qualification to the knockout rounds. In this new format, more teams than ever before can realistically aim and target at qualifying into the knockout rounds. In the video today, I'm going to be imposing the most difficult prediction task I have ever had to manage, and that is predicting the entire final standings of the Champions League group stage, with a particular focus on the 4 teams from the Premier League as well as the Scottish champion Celtic. At any point in the video today, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We are pushing for 20,000 subscribers. We are on the road, and we cannot do that without your support, guys. And get into the comment section in this one and let me know, what do you think I've got wrong, or who do you think might actually upset the apple cart and, you know, go above the prediction I've got here, go above the expectations that maybe them and their own fans have. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. I think the main thing everyone's looking at with this new Champions League format is the big table, which we'll get to in this video, how it's going to finish up once we get to the end of January. But for me, the biggest difference is the fixture list. Playing no team twice, being able to play teams from your own pot, really does open up the possibilities for all sorts of teams to now really break into that position where they can qualify for the knockout rounds. But if we have a look at the teams we're focusing on today, first of all, with Manchester City, the champions of England, they are opening their campaign playing Inter Milan. This is a Champions League final replay of sorts, you know, from when City lifted the cup themselves. But outside of that, Man City have got a very favourable draw, playing the likes of Slovan Bratislava, Sparta Prague, Club Brugge, Feyenoord, and even Sporting Lisbon, who Man City have turned over, you know, quite famously recently enough by a big scoreline. And really, outside of playing Inter Milan at home, which should be a little bit more in Man City's favour, PSG away, which is going to be a great game for the neutral, and Juventus away, Man City have really got the pick of the litter here, I feel, in terms of the fixture list that they've got themselves from each pot, as well as some of the teams that they'll be competing against. It's really hard to imagine, looking at this fixture list, that Man City are going to drop many points, if any. And outside of the PSG game, it's really hard to imagine them conceding any goals. I think this is going to be a very convincing, a very clinical group stage performance from Man City, with such a huge squad, with amazing quality and talent all the way through it. Even if they do rotate away to Slovan Bratislava, at home to Sparta Prague, you've got big confidence and belief that Man City are still going to get almost, maybe, let's see how the video goes, maximum points. And I do think the fixture list, or the computer or whatever, has been very kind to Arsenal as well. Outside of playing Inter Milan away at the San Siro and having PSG come to London, the other 6 fixtures are very attractive. I was going to say unscary, but that's not a word. But definitely games that Arsenal will be looking at, that they should be getting 4 or 5 victories out of. The opening game against Europa League winners Atalanta away in Italy is a game that could be a bit of a banana skin, and one where the Gunners, if they did drop points, they would probably be able to make them back up quite easily, with the likes of Shakhtar Donetsk, Sporting Lisbon, Zagreb and Girona, never mind Monaco, who just really aren't that scary these days. This should be a really good, really convincing group stage period for Arsenal, but with the main focus of their style of play this season being defensively resolute and being clinical, taking the chances that do come your way, there's maybe a bit of room in here for a bit of an upset. Similarly to Manchester City, Liverpool open up their Champions League campaign with a Champions League final replay of sorts as they face off against AC Milan, but also in the fixture list they've got another Champions League final replay as they host Real Madrid. But outside of Real Madrid, really, every team that they're playing here is in red, which I thought was quite funny when I did notice that myself. But playing PSV, Lille, Girona, Bologna, these are games that I think Liverpool will do well in. But this fixture list is decisively tougher than I think Arsenal's and Manchester City's, because going away to Leipzig, hosting Leverkusen, these are games that I think will be a bit tougher than, you know, the likes of what Man City and Arsenal have got at their disposal. But overall, Arne Slot's Liverpool have been very impressive so far in the Champions League, and across these 8 games, you've got to fancy that, especially at home, they're still going to continue their Champions League dominance, this getting the job done at Champions League level that we've seen from Liverpool in this kind of current generation that we've had. And then we've got the new boys into the Champions League party from England, Aston Villa, who I don't think could have really asked for much of a better draw overall. Outside of playing Juventus, which is at home, and Bayern Munich, again, which is at home, the rest of the games here are games that Aston Villa will be going into and thinking about getting all 3 points. Playing the likes of Young Boys, Club Brugge, Monaco, even Celtic, dare I say, and Bologna. These are games that Aston Villa should go into with Unai Emery, who's got that nous, who's got that been there, done that in the European competition format. Fair enough, Champions League hasn't always been his bag, but going away to difficult venues in Europe, hosting big teams at your place, these are things that are not new to Unai Emery. He's going to have a good game plan for this, I feel. And Aston Villa really do have great prospects of qualifying into the knockout rounds. And I think I speak for all Celtic fans when I say we were delighted with the draw that we got. Very achievable, winnable games overall, with, you know, the bigger matches not being as scary as what they have been in recent years. Sure, going away to Dortmund is going to be difficult. Going away to Atalanta, we're probably going to get stuffed. But playing the likes of Bratislava, Zagreb, Young Boys and Bruges, these are 4 games that Celtic can be really confident in. And then welcoming Leipzig to Celtic Park, who, you know, we've done well against in the past. And in the final day, going away to Aston Villa for a Battle of Britain, which normally Celtic do really well in. This feels like a great group stage fixture list. Celtic finally, for the first time in over a decade, could qualify for the Champions League knockout rounds under Brendan Rodgers. Now, when I was going through and predicting every scoreline in every match in the Champions League, one thing became overly apparent to me, and that was the final 2 games are in January. They are in the new year, so the winter transfer window will be in full effect at that point, and any teams that maybe find themselves, you know, on the bubble, on the line, they can see the last 2 fixtures they've got and what those teams have got to play for. We could see some really tactical transfers in this window, you know, maybe to reinforce the ranks as well as maybe deplete another team perhaps. It could be a really interesting transfer window in that regard. And I do feel the final 2 games coming later on after the Christmas break for the European teams might play into their hands a little bit better than what it might do for the UK based teams who will be playing all the way through. Celtic, and I think it's the same for England, I can't remember, but we don't really have a winter break as such anymore. The fixtures are just going to be staggered out over that period. So I do feel the final 2 games were the hardest ones to predict, because by that time the squads, the current standings, what needs to be done will flavour the temperature of those final 2 games especially, and there is a lot of unknowns. It's really hard to factor in, you know, like who they're playing the weekend before and who they're playing the weekend after, and like I try to do it as much as I can across all of these games. And after I'd went through predicting all the matches and all the results, these are the teams that came up as being eliminated from the Champions League group stage, and I've got to say there's not many surprises here. Most of the teams, especially in the bottom 6 or so, aren't expected to get many points with the fixture list that they have, and it is all about the games where they play against each other if they're going to be able to get enough points. But as you can see here, I've got PSV, Salzburg, Bologna and Feyenoord at the top of the relegation zone, or the knockout zone, whatever you want to think of it as, on 6 or 7 points. So I think that will be the bubble for any teams that do have aspirations of getting into the knockout rounds. The weird thing is there's no parachute into the Europa League here, so once you're done with the Champions League, you're out. It's back to domestic action until next season. So Bruges, Shakhtar, Young Boys, Zagreb, Red Star, Sparta, Sturm Graz, Slovan Bratislava. I hope you have a good time, because you're not going to be getting many points. And out of the 5 teams from the UK, I've got 3 of them qualifying in the playoff zone. Out of those 5, in joint last position, I would have Aston Villa with 4 wins, 2 draws and 2 losses. Those 2 losses coming against Bayern Munich and Juventus. Now, the Juventus game might actually go in Aston Villa's favour, but I've got them finishing on 14 points, which should drop them into around 14th in the table. Joint in 14th or 13th, however you want to think about it. On goal difference, maybe a little bit ahead of them. I've got Celtic finishing this campaign with the 4 victories we would hope and imagine to get. The 2 losses that I think are there to be had. I think Celtic will get a draw at home to Leipzig and could get a point on the road as well. And if Celtic were in the top half of this table, right behind Paris Saint-Germain, as you can see here, I think everyone in Glasgow would consider that to be a resounding success. But just above them, I would have Liverpool, the only undefeated team in the playoff section. I don't think Liverpool have got many games where they will be out and out dropping points, but I think playing against AC Milan, playing against Real Madrid, these are games that might take points off them, might be a bit of a sweat, it might go all the way to the whistle in refereeing decisions. But I think Liverpool could get out of this undefeated and, you know, ultimately finishing in 11th here. If one of those results are predicted were to change, were to go a little bit different, for example, the final group stage game I do have them drawn away to PSV just because of the fixture pile up, and I can just imagine a lot of these teams really starting to struggle towards the back end of this Champions League campaign as they're marrying up, especially in the Premier League for the English teams, trying to fight into the top four, maybe wrestling with a couple of domestic cups as well. So it doesn't take much for Liverpool to get out of this playoff position and into the guaranteed qualifying segment. And in the top 8, the creme de la creme of European football, I've got Arsenal in 8th position, the last team to kind of squeak in there, also on 17 points. So it's really, really tight on that bubble. Goal difference is certainly going to come into it. I've got Arsenal losing 1 game and drawing 2. I could see them getting a draw away to Atalanta, maybe at home to Paris Saint-Germain as well. But I think away to Inter Milan in the San Siro could be, you know, a bit of a stretch for Arsenal. That's a game they could certainly lose, and that would land them in 8th position. Just ahead of them, undefeated in the top half of the section, I would have Atletico Madrid, followed by Inter Milan, Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Barcelona, and Bayern Munich, giving us 4 teams out of the 8 undefeated, with Man City sitting top. I think Man City win every one of their games here. And as you can see with the top order, especially Man City and Bayern Munich, I think this group stage, the fixture list for them is so favourable that they're going to score buckets of goals. Now, Bayern are away to Barcelona and they are at home to Paris Saint-Germain, so they do have some difficult games to go, don't get me wrong. It's not completely plain sailing for them in that regard, but I just think overall the form and the tempo of Bayern is going to be very unresistible, and they're going to be one of the teams to beat this year in the Champions League. And looking at the teams that will qualify for the playoffs, I think there's a real hope, there's a real opportunity for an outside team to go really, really far. Qualifying for the knockout rounds, I do have the likes of Stade Brest, Stuttgart, Girona, Sporting Lisbon, Lille, who are okay, but I don't think they're that great at the moment. So if you look at, you know, 9th to 24th there is a good like 4 or 5 teams in there that, depending on who you support and who you back, the draw could be favourable enough where you get out of the last 16 playoff, the playoff for the last 16, however they're going to call it, and then you get into those knockout rounds, the business end of the tournament, where really anything could happen. I think this is set up to be the most exciting Champions League format we've ever had. It's going to be a great one for anyone that does like to passively follow football, fantasy football wise, or putting on bets or anything like that, because every match day when I was looking at this, there's Bayern Munich playing somebody they should smash, there's Man City playing somebody they should smash, and there's always, like, every match day has a few of those games where it should be goals galore. It's going to be great for the neutral to watch, whether your team's involved in the Champions League format or not this year. And really, I just can't wait to get it started. Also, I've got really high hopes for Celtic. I'd love to see Aston Villa do well. And I think for Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool, they're going to have, like, quite a typical Champions League setting where they beat the really small teams, and then the bigger teams, maybe it's a case of game management. Can you get the win? Don't lose it. And we're going to see some really interesting developments and like squad management sort of tactics, because we don't have, you know, the 3 teams you're going to play home and away twice and all that kind of different caper. It's going to be all the way to the end. Every team should be playing somebody that is motivated to continue to get points, to continue to try and win, to continue to try and solidify their position in the knockout round to qualify for the next stage of the Champions League. So I don't think we're going to get even to the last match day and there's going to be many dead rubbers. I think there's still going to be tons and tons to play for, especially again looking at that knockout zone I've got here, where really about 6 or 7 of those clubs could be on the cusp of really upsetting the prediction I've got here, getting themselves into the knockout stage, which would then pull out one of the more established teams, one of the teams that are maybe expected to do a little bit better, and pull them out of there and knock them out of the tournament. It's sure to be an absolute rollercoaster ride. Match day 1 is about to start this week, guys. I hope you enjoy it. On screen now, some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more content like this. Get into the comments section, hit a like button, all that good stuff, guys. Stay out of trouble, and I will catch you on the next one.